Imagine for a moment that you are living in a time where kings decide the fate of entire nations with a simple gesture of the hand, where prophets walk the streets performing impossible miracles, where the faith of a people is tested to the utmost limits. That's the reality we're going to explore today, diving into the fascinating and dramatic book of 2 Kings. Have you ever stopped to think about what it would be like to live in a divided kingdom? 2 countries that were once one, now enemies. Brothers separated by wars, politics, and idolatry. It is exactly in this chaotic scenario that 2 Kings throws us. And I guarantee, this story has more twists and turns than any Netflix series. Let's start from the beginning. The book of 2 Kings is actually a direct continuation of 1 Kings. The story begins with King Ahaziah of Israel falling through a grate in his palace. It seems like a small detail, but this accident will trigger extraordinary events. The king is wounded, desperate, and instead of seeking God, he sends his messengers to consult Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron. Can you imagine? The king of Israel, who is supposed to worship the true God, is seeking answers from a pagan idol. This is where one of the most fascinating characters in the entire Bible comes in, the prophet Elijah. This man was not afraid of kings, he was not afraid of armies, he was not afraid of anything because he knew who was on his side. Elijah intercepts the messengers and sends a direct message to Ahaziah. You will not get up from the bed where you are lying. He will surely die. And you know what's more impressive? When the king sends soldiers to arrest Elijah, fire literally descends from heaven and consumes them. 50 men disappeared in seconds. This happens twice until a third captain has the wisdom to kneel down and beg for mercy. But Elijah's story is coming to an end. And here one of the most cinematic scenes in the entire Bible takes place. Elijah knows that he is about to be taken to heaven, and his disciple Elisha absolutely refuses to leave him alone. They walk together from Gilgal to Bethel, from Bethel to Jericho, and from Jericho to the Jordan River. At each stop, Elijah tries to make Elisha stay behind, but the young prophet is insistent. As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you. And then, on the bank of the Jordan, Elijah takes off his cloak, hits the waters, and the river splits. They cross on dry land, just as Joshua did decades earlier. On the other side, Elijah asks, "What do you want me to do for you before you're taken?" And Elisha, without hesitation, asks for a double portion of Elijah's spirit. Not because he wants to be better than his master, but because he understands the magnitude of the mission that lies ahead. Suddenly, as they talk, a fire chariot pulled by fire horses appears out of nowhere and separates the two. A whirlwind takes Elijah to the heavens, and Elisha stands there, holding only the cloak that fell from his master. He returns alone to the Jordan, takes that same cloak, beats the waters, and cries out, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" And the waters split again. The mantle was passed. The mission continues. But now let's understand the political and spiritual context of this period. Israel is divided into 2 kingdoms. The northern kingdom, called Israel, with its capital in Samaria, and the southern kingdom called Judah, with its capital in Jerusalem. And here's the drama. While Judah retains David's lineage and has a few godly kings, Israel is sunk in idolatry, one king worse than the other. Elisha begins his ministry by making the bitter waters of Jericho healthy, a miracle of restoration and hope. But soon after, a controversial episode occurs when young people mock him by saying, "Go up, bald man." Bears come out of the woods and kill 42 of them. This shows us something important. Mocking God's prophets was not a simple adolescent game. It was a deliberate rejection of divine authority at a time when apostasy was consuming the nation. One of the most moving moments in the book is the story of the poor widow who desperately searches for Elisha. Her husband died leaving debts, and now creditors want to take her 2 children as slaves. She only has a small bottle of olive oil. Elisha says, "Go and borrow vessels from all your neighbors, empty bowls, as many as you can. Then go into the house with your children, close the door, and start pouring olive oil into all the containers." And do you know what happens? The oil does not stop flowing until all the vessels are full. She sells the oil, pays off her debts, and still has enough left for her and her children to live on. God not only solves the immediate problem, but provides abundantly. Another incredible story is of the Shunammite, a rich woman who prepares a special room in her house for Elisha to rest whenever he passes through the region. She doesn't ask for anything in return, but Elisha wants to bless her. He discovers that she has no children and her husband is elderly. Elisha prophesies, "Next year at this time, you will be embracing a son." And she gets pregnant. She has the boy. But years later, the child dies suddenly in the countryside. The Shunammite woman runs to Elisha, desperate but with unshakable faith. Elisha goes to the house, prays, lies down on the child, and the child comes back to life. Imagine the excitement of this mother holding her resurrected child in her arms. But 2 Kings is not just about individual miracles. It's also about wars, international politics, and prophecies that are fulfilled with frightening precision. Naaman, the commander of the Syrian army, is a powerful warrior, but he has leprosy. A captured young Israelite woman, working as a slave in her home, has the courage to say, "If my master were to see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would heal him." Naaman travels to Israel with horses, chariots, silver and gold. But Elisha does not even leave the house to receive him. He only sends a messenger to say, "Go and wash 7 times in the Jordan River." Naaman is furious. He expected the prophet to come out, lay his hands, call on the name of the Lord, and put on a show. And besides, aren't the rivers of Damascus better than the Jordan? But his servants convince him to obey, and when he dives for the 7th time, his skin is completely clean, like that of a child. Naaman comes back transformed, not only physically, but spiritually. He declares, "Now I know that there is no God in all the earth, but in Israel." Elisha's ministry is full of miracles. He multiplies loaves to feed 100 men. He floats an iron axe. He reveals the secret war plans of the king of Syria, and even when he is dead, his bones resurrect a man. But all this supernatural power happens in the midst of a progressive spiritual decay. The kings of Israel continue to do what is evil in the sight of the Lord. Jehoram, Jehu, Jehoahaz, Jehoash, Jeroboam II, Zechariah, Shallum, Menahem, Pekah, and Hosea, a succession of kings who lead the people deeper and deeper into idolatry. There are coups d'etat, assassinations, conspiracies. Jehu is anointed king specifically to destroy the house of Ahab and end Baal worship in Israel, and he does so with brutal violence, fulfilling the prophecies to the letter. Meanwhile, in Judah, the situation is a little better, but not much. There are godly kings like Joash, who renovates the temple, and Hezekiah, who removes the high places and destroys idols. But there are also terrible kings like Ahaz, who even sacrifices his own son in the fire, and Manasseh, considered one of the worst kings of Judah, who fills Jerusalem with innocent blood and brings back all the abominable practices that his predecessors had removed. The turning point comes with devastating force. Assyria, the most brutal empire of the time, invades the northern kingdom. The siege of Samaria lasted 3 years. Hunger is so terrible that women even eat their own children. In 722 BC, Samaria falls. The kingdom of Israel ceases to exist. The Assyrians deport the population, scattering it over various regions of the empire, and bring foreign peoples to inhabit the land. The 10 northern tribes are lost to history. The prophecy is fulfilled. Because of persistent idolatry and rejection of the prophets sent by God, Israel is torn from her land. But Judah still has a chance. During Hezekiah's reign, something extraordinary happens. The Assyrian king Sennacherib besieges Jerusalem with a huge army. Their commander mocks the God of Israel, saying that no god of any nation has been able to deliver his people from the hands of Assyria. Hezekiah takes the threatening letter to the temple, extends it before the Lord, and prays with humility and faith. That same night, the angel of the Lord goes out and kills 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. Sennacherib returns humiliated to Nineveh, where he is murdered by his own sons while worshipping in the temple of his god. Hezekiah also experiences a personal miracle. He becomes deathly ill, and the prophet Isaiah comes to say, "Put your house in order, because you are going to die." Hezekiah turns to the wall and weeps bitterly, reminding God of his faithfulness. Before Isaiah even leaves the courtyard, God sends him back with a new message: "I will add 15 years to your life." As a sign, God makes the shadow of the sun recede 10 steps. The impossible happens. But after Hezekiah comes disaster. His son Manasseh reigns 55 years doing evil in an extreme way. After him, his son Ammon continues the same path. When finally a godly king ascends the throne, Josiah, only 8 years old, the spiritual situation is desperate. During renovations in the temple, they find the book of the law that had been lost. When Josiah hears the reading, he tears his garments in despair, realizing how far the people have strayed from God's commandments. He promotes the greatest religious reform in the history of Judah. He destroys the high places, breaks the sacred pillars, burns the idol poles, desecrates the pagan altars, removes the horses dedicated to the sun, and celebrates a Passover such as has not been celebrated since the days of the judges. But it's too late. The sins of Manasseh sealed Judah's fate. After Josiah's death in an unnecessary battle against Egypt, weak and evil kings come. Babylon, the new ruling empire, besieged Jerusalem multiple times. First, they take the treasures and some captives, including Daniel. Then they take more captives, including Ezekiel. Finally, in 586 BC, the unthinkable happens. Jerusalem falls, Solomon's temple is burned to the ground, the walls are torn down, and the people are taken captive to Babylon. The book ends on a small note of hope. Jehoiakim, king of Judah, who had been imprisoned in Babylon for 37 years, is freed and treated kindly by the new Babylonian king. It is a reminder that even in exile, even in discipline, God has not abandoned his people completely. So what can we take away from this epic story? 2 Kings shows us that the consequences of our choices are real. Kings and entire nations have fallen because they consistently rejected God's word. But we also see that God is patient, sending prophet after prophet, giving chance after chance. And in the moments of greatest despair, when people like the poor widow, the Shunammite, Naaman, or Hezekiah turn to God with genuine faith, miracles happen. The division between the kingdoms began with Solomon abandoning God for his many foreign wives, and ended with both kingdoms being destroyed and the people exiled. It is a solemn warning about how small concessions to idolatry and sin can, over time, completely destroy a nation that once knew the power and glory of God. But the story doesn't end there. This exile, this seeming end of everything, actually prepares the way for something much greater. It is in exile that Judaism as we know it is formed. It is from this promise to David of an eternal kingdom that will come. Centuries later, Jesus Christ, the Son of David, whose kingdom will never end. Think about it. This whole dramatic story of 2 Kings, with their good and bad kings, their powerful prophets, their awesome miracles, and their devastating tragedies, all point to a greater truth. No human king, no matter how good, could save the people permanently. They needed a perfect king, a definitive prophet, an eternal priest. And that's the story that continues in the New Testament.